going to go through the series of being intentional. So be intentional and actively wait. Who here likes to wait? Said nobody. You do? Really? Yeah. I don't believe it. Waiting is the worst. It's the worst. I hate waiting. I hate standing in line. Now that we have I don't know, I call it PVR, but that's probably old school. What do we call it now? Not PVR, it's something else. I don't know. DVR, or I don't know what it is. Whatever it is. Now that I have that, when I watch regular TV, it's painful because you have to wait through the commercials. And we're do the fast forward, skip. And I can't do that. It's painful. Waiting is horrible. But sometimes God calls us to wait and be still. But he does not call us to wait and be still and just sit and wait. He calls us to still actively wait. So what does that look like? We're going to talk about two different men today who had high callings on their life to be king of Israel. And both of them were called to wait, but one of them didn't and lost out because of it, and another one did. And so we're going to talk today about King Saul and David. So if you have your Bibles, if you want to turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 13, we'll start there. So we're going to pick up first talking about Saul. Saul was a king. He was anointed by God. God wanted him. He was the first king. The Israelites actually didn't have a king. They just had judges, and all other nations had kings. And the Israelites were like, we want to be like everybody else, so we want a king. So after much disgruntled whatever, God finally said, okay, I'm going to give you a king. And he anointed Saul. And Saul was a king over Israel for about 40 years. And we're picking this up at this point here. So 1 Samuel 13. And they had I'm just going to really, again, just paraphrase. There was just this big battle that the Israelites won. And afterwards was going to be a sacrifice. And Saul was told by Samuel to wait until I come back to do the sacrifice. When I come back, we will do the offering together. But Saul was impatient. He was waiting. People started to leave the area because they were like, we don't want to wait anymore. People don't like to wait. So Saul was afraid that he was going to lose his crowd. Again, paraphrasing big time here. And so Saul decided not to wait. So we're going to pick up in verse 13. Well, let's go to verse 8. Saul remained in Gilgal, and all the troops were with him, and they were quaking in fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel to do the offering. Saul's men began to scatter, so again, they started to leave. And so he said, bring to me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings. And Saul offered up the burnt offering. So Saul went ahead of Samuel. Samuel said, wait for me, I'm going to come, we're going to do this offering together. But the people started to scatter, his men were leaving, and Saul was a little bit frustrated, so he's like, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm tired of waiting, I'm just going to do this on my own. So he does the offering, and it says, just as he finished doing the offering, Samuel arrived. So he didn't have the patience to wait until Samuel arrived. And Saul went out to greet him. What have you done? Said Samuel. Saul said, when I saw that the men were scattering and that you didn't come here at the set time, that the Philistines were assembling in Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come against me at Gilgal, and I have sought the Lord's favor, so I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering. I felt compelled. So a lot of times when we are waiting upon the Lord and we get frustrated because we're still waiting and we're still waiting and we're still waiting and we're not getting the answer that we want, we may start to do things in our own. And he said, I felt compelled. This is a selfish statement. I felt compelled. I wanted to do this offering. People were leaving. I wanted to have a crowd, and I felt to do it. So Samuel said to him, you've done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command of the Lord that was given to you. He said, I would have established your kingdom over Israel all time, but now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him a ruler over the people because you have not kept the Lord's command. So because he did not keep the command that God gave him to wait, he then will now eventually, shortly soon, lose his throne. He will not be king anymore. It says that your kingdom will not endure. He didn't want to wait. He was still king for a while, but there's coming a new king, a new kid on the block, so to say, that God is bringing. Entering in now the new kid on the block, so the new king. So 1 Samuel, jump over to 1 Samuel 16. And this is where a young man named David was anointed king. He wasn't made king yet. He was just anointed king. He was told that one day you are going to be taking over Saul's position because Saul has gone against the Lord. He didn't listen. He didn't listen to my commands. He jumped ahead of what my plan was. He did things on his own, in his own attention, and he jumped ahead, and he is going to lose his throne, and you will one day take over the kingdom from him. So in this little chunk of scripture, again, I'm not going to read it all, but I'm just going to kind of just paraphrase the story, is Samuel comes to the house of Jesse, and he says, I feel that I'm supposed to come to your house and anoint one of your sons to be king. And Jesse brings out all of his sons, and Samuel goes to each of them and requests of the Lord, is this the one, is this the one, is this the one? And Samuel's like, no, none of these boys are the one. Are you sure you don't have another boy? And Jesse says, well, I do have this other son of mine, but he's kind of like the insignificant one. He's not really important. He's kind of young. He's a little weak and kind of, but he's out in the field and he's a shepherd. And Jesse says, bring him out. And so Jesse brings him, and Samuel looks at him and he says, yes, this is the one. He's the one. Now that's a whole another sermon on its own. We're not going to go there today. But Samuel anoints David, which means he pours oil over his head. And he says to David, one day you are going to be king. So now David is in the waiting room. He's waiting. One day he's told, he has the promise from God, he is going to be king. We don't know when it's going to happen, but that's a promise that you have right now that you are going to be. You just have to wait. So he needed to be intentional, but actively wait. Because God put this promise on his life, but God wasn't ready to put him in that place yet. It wasn't his time yet to be king. He had to actively wait. Now, David could have sat down and been like, oh, hey, Dad, put his feet up for a little while and been like, I'm going to be king. So, I don't need to do shepherding anymore. I don't need to do any of your housework anymore, any chores, farming chores. I don't need to do any of that. I'm just going to sit here and just eat chocolates all day and wait for the day that I become king. He could have done that, but he didn't. He actively waited for the time that God was going to position him into his throne. God called him, but there was preparation that needed to be done in his life before he became king. If he would have become king right when God anointed him, he probably would have failed horribly because he wasn't ready yet. There was a process that needed to take place for him to be able to become king. Sometimes when God gives us a promise or we're believing in him, we're expecting something good, and we're like, you know what, God, I know you're going to do this, and we don't get the answer right when we want it. We get frustrated, we get mad at God, and we either stop praying or we just curse God, or we're just like, oh, this is so dumb, why doesn't he listen to me? And we have these pity parties like, oh, I don't hear God's voice, and I don't know where he is, and why? But maybe it's because God isn't ready yet to put you in that place. For whatever reason, something needs to happen, something needs to take place before you get the answer that he was. So he was told to wait, but he had to actively wait. So part of being a king was the preparation. So he needed to do these things, learn certain things to be king one day. So actively seeking God, learning, pressing on until it was time. I'm going to get you to prepare that video for a second. So I'm just going to relate this to 8 months ago. I had double knee replacement surgery. 8 months ago, I went in not knowing what life was going to be like afterwards. But prior to that, if you guys remember, do you remember these? For those of you who have no idea what this is about. Oh, I can go a little teary. I didn't expect that one. Y'all know I love my heels. And I bought these dumb red boots because I just thought they were so cool. And I have not had them on my feet other than to try them on. You can even look at the bottoms. They have not been touching pavement. And I bought them in faith that one day God was going to restore my legs to where I would be able to wear my fancy red boots. And if you remember when I preached this, it was about victory. And I told you one day I am going to come back and you are going to see these boots. So, red boots. Maybe do we have the video? Yeah, okay. So this is me about a week in from my double knee replacement surgery. Go ahead. I had to literally wear the watch again.
She was high on something.
Sorry for those that are on live stream, I can't see. It's just me walking in the hospital. My new trick. That's what I said. That was my new trick. That was like as fast as I could go. So if you remember seeing that, it was hard. And let me tell you, I put a smile on my face for the video. I was in pain. I was in so much pain. And there was some ladies in the hospital that had a number of years on me, we'll say. And they'd be like, we did like laps around the floor of the hospital. And they would like book it past me. These little Asian ladies. And girls like, they're beating you, and they're like 30 years older than you. I'm trying. Okay, so when I was in the hospital, you first entered into just after surgery. First I had a wheelchair. And this red card was strapped to my wheelchair. And the red card meant that I was not allowed to go anywhere by myself. So this was like, like any device that I used to move around, I had to have this attached, which at the time was just a wheelchair. So I couldn't go anywhere by myself. I couldn't go to the washroom by myself. I couldn't go to the TV room by myself. I could do nothing with the red card. I had to have assistance. They would not allow me to go anywhere by myself. And then after, a bit of time, I get a yellow card. Which then you get to switch your yellow card from your wheelchair or your walker. Actually, by the time you get a yellow card, you're generally using a walker. And I attached this to my walker, and that was kind of like the neon sign saying that I had a little bit more freedom. I could do a little bit more on my own, but they still needed to keep one eye on me. So I couldn't leave the floor. I had to stay within visual of the nurses. The green card. The green card, when you got the green card, that means you were literally allowed to do, and you couldn't leave the hospital, but you could go to other floors, you could go outside to the garden, you could go pee by yourself. Like, how exciting is that? Okay, this is a big deal. Now you guys are like, whatever. But honestly, in the hospital, when we would go to physio, there would be people who would be like, oh, she lost her yellow card. She's back to her red card now. So it was this banter. How did she get a green card? That's not fair. Why do I still have, it was hysterical. So to get a green card, you had to show up for your physio every day, which we're in a physio hospital, but believe it or not, some people still didn't go. You're a nurse. They just didn't go. They just stayed in bed. So if you didn't go to your physio, you would lose your green card. If you didn't do your exercises, because you do physio, but then you still have to do your exercises on your own, and you have to check in and all that kind of stuff. If you didn't do that, you could lose your green card. So there was a process of having to go through. So I could have waited in my recovery, and sure enough, if I just sat on my bed for the next 8 months, my knees would heal, but they wouldn't heal as well if I actively waited for the healing. I had to persevere through the pain, and yes, there was many times where I went to physio and I left crying, or in the middle of it crying, because it was very, very painful. But I had to actively wait for the healing to happen. I had to persevere and continue to do what needed to be done to get the prize, to be able to get the victory over my surgery. Okay, so no healing would happen unless I decided to, not a good healing would happen. I needed to do the exercise. Ramona lent me a bike, and I've been using the bike, and it stares at me every day. It's in my living room. For those of you who have been to my home, you know. So I have to actively continue to do these exercises to be able to be capable of doing things physically that I want to. So it takes actively waiting. David was going to be king, but he wouldn't be king right away. And he didn't just sit and wait. He had to actively wait. So he needed to wait on God, just like waiting that we do when we try to get an answer of prayer. So listen to this. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. When you are waiting for something from God, you need to continue to actively seek his face. We don't just sit and wait knowing that someday the promise is going to come. I knew that someday I was going to have healing. I knew that someday I wouldn't need a walker or a cane to walk. I knew that was going to happen. But I needed to actively wait so that the results would be better. David knew he was going to be king, but he didn't just sit and wait for God to say, okay, here's your throne. He needed to actively wait so that God could prepare him properly for what was needing to come. So sometimes waiting, the result doesn't happen as fast as we want it to. So for sure, there was times, for me, with waiting, I want to be able to run again. I want to be able to dance and worship again. But I couldn't do it yet. I had to continue to actively wait until I could. Same as David. I'm sure there was moments where he's like, God, when can I become king? It was almost 20 years. From the moment where that oil was poured on his head, where the promise was given to him, 20 years before he actually got the throne. I'm sure in that 20 years, he would have been like, God, did I hear from you? I'm sure I heard from you. When is this going to take place? When is this going to happen? All the time that David was waiting, here's a few things that he had to go through. He ended up going to work in the kingdom. He ended up going to serve Saul. Can you imagine serving the man whose position you're going to have? What about if you're asking God for something and God says, whatever it is. You're asking God for, I don't know, a new car. I'm trying to think of something and this is just off my head. And God says to you, I want you to go and wash Janelle's new car. But God, I want the new car. Well, I want you to go and wash hers. I blessed her with a new car. I want you to go bless her and wash her car. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like a kick in the face almost. You're going to be king, but you need to go and you need to work under that king. You need to serve that king. So he goes to the kingdom and he serves King Saul. He ended up killing Goliath for Saul. Saul was at the battlefield. Saul was afraid to kill Goliath. And David comes along, I got this. I can do this for you. He kills Goliath. Saul ended up having problems with, they say today, maybe it was like manic depression or some kind of mental illness of some sort. And David would go and play music for him to bring peace to his mind. Imagine sitting there playing your instrument for a man who's losing his mind, and you're like, dude, like, just let me have the throne already. Like, come on. But he didn't. He actively served Saul. Saul tried multiple times to kill David, because Saul knew that David was going to be one day taking his position. And Saul tried many times to kill him. One time David's sitting there playing music, and Saul throws a spear at him. Like, imagine being like, la, 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 okay, like playing some wonderful music, spa music, and all of a sudden, get a spear. Like, that'd be enough to make me run. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going to have your position, dude, like, someday, but I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. He didn't. He continued to persevere and serve Saul. David persevered, serving God's will, actively waiting. David had the opportunity to kill Saul at one point. Turn to 1 Samuel 24. 1 Samuel 24, verse 3. So David has his own army, and they are in a cave, basically hiding from Saul. And Saul comes along. He's searching out, trying to find David because he wants to kill him. And verse 3, it says, he came to the sheep's pen along the way. There was a cave there. And Saul went in to relieve himself. That's in the Bible. Saul went in to go pee. Saul goes in to go pee where David and his men are hiding. The men said, David, this is the day that the Lord spoke of when he said that I will give you your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Then David crept unnoticed and cut the corner of Saul's robe. So Saul is going to the bathroom, and he doesn't know that over here is David's men and David. And so David sneaks over. Saul's like in his own little world here. And David cuts a piece of his garment, and he goes over here. He doesn't kill Saul, but he just cuts a piece of his robe. The soldiers are telling him, you should kill him. This is what God said. God said you're going to be king. He said he's going to hand your enemy to you in your hand. This is the moment. This is the time. You get to kill him. You get to take your position in this way. Sometimes we think that God said something, and we can take a bit of what we want. This is what I want. I want the throne. And this is a perfect opportunity where I can kill Saul, and he's trying to kill me. Why wouldn't I kill him? And we can take this opportunity and kind of take what God promised us and then sprinkle on a little bit of what we want. Well, this is what God promised, but I'm just going to add a little bit of this to it because this is what I want. Remember Saul in the very beginning. I felt compelled. I did what I wanted. But David didn't. He didn't kill Saul. He just cut a little bit of the garment. Sometimes we can twist the words of God to do what we think that they should say. But God said to David, you are going to be king, but you are not to kill Saul to do it. He never said, you can kill Saul so that you can have a position. He didn't say that to him. He said, you are going to be king. And however God is going to make that happen, he knew he was going to be king, but he had to trust and actively wait for God to work it out the way that he wants. Sometimes the enemy will bring distractions into our lives. He will make you think something else that's God's will. He'll bring distractions and worldly pleasure and things that will make you think, this is what I want, this is what I need, this feels good, this must be God. Because it makes me happy, it must be God. So sometimes we can get distracted as the enemy takes the word of God and twists it ever so slightly so that all of a sudden we come away and we go, oh, yeah. This feels right. Must be God. God does. We need to listen and actively wait and press on. David shows honor to Saul. Going down this chapter a little ways, when Saul left the cave, David came out and he called to him. Verse 8, then David went out of the cave and he called to Saul and he said, my Lord, my king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground, and he said to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord has delivered you into my hands. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared your life. I said, I will not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed." So as Saul leaves the cave, David takes the cloak and says, "Hey, Saul, look, I could have killed you, but I chose not to." And not only does he say that, but he honors him. He says, "My Lord, I could have killed you." He's honoring him. He calls him my father. He lays himself down prostrate before him. "I could have killed you, but I didn't. Do you not see the kind of man that I am? Would you stop trying to kill me already?" He honors him with what he was doing. He tells him, "You are God's anointed. I will not lay a hand on you. I can't touch you. God has placed you in this position, and it's not my choice to say when your position is done. I will actively wait. I will actively press on for God's will. I will not take it into my own hands." Do you see what could have happened here but didn't? Jumping down to verse 16 to 21. Because David was so faithful in actively waiting. Because David was honoring to Saul through this whole journey. He still came and played music for him. He honored him. He served him. And here he had a chance to kill him, but he didn't. He honored that man. Verse 16. When David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about good you did for me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, and you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy and does not let him get away unharmed, may the Lord reward you well for the way you have treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants and wipe out my name from my family, from my father's family." Because of David's faithfulness in honoring him, Saul ended up changing his attitude towards David. And he pleaded for his own family's safety. "When I'm gone, would you please still take care of my descendants? Even though I've treated you so horribly, will you forgive me? You are a righteous man. You are the one who has stuck close and actively waited upon the Lord. You are the one who pressed in closer to God. You are the one who is righteous all along this way." Saul lost his kingship for not waiting on God. David became king for waiting on God. David was forever known as the greatest king to ever rule. David still today, thousands of years later, is known as the man after God's own heart. So, my pursuing in my exercise. Yeah! I hope we missed. I got a chair up there to do it. I thought, don't I? Woo! Aren't they cute? My persevering. Oh, sorry. Oh. My persevering in exercise. Sounds so lame. Who likes to exercise? Nobody. But not just that. Because you guys stood behind me and you prayed for me. Persevering in exercise, prayer from the saints who supported me and loved me. believing that one day I wouldn't have to use the walker. I could actually wear heels and actually, like, look at me. I'm jumping up and down. I might pay for this later. It feels good right now. Actively waiting. Actively waiting on God. Whatever you are believing God for, don't just sit in the chair and go, oh, someday it's going to happen. Actively wait. Pray. Seek His face. Honor people who are already where you want to be. Honor people where you want to be. Honor people who have what you want. Don't stand and say, oh, this is really a drag. Look at them. They're getting all the blessings and look at us. No, have a good attitude towards honor, love, persevere, press on. It was 20 years for David. 20 years. That's a long time. But if you don't give up, what is in your future? David didn't get up. He got to be called king. He's forever known as a man after God's own heart. And he was asked for forgiveness by his very enemy. His enemies recognized what an amazing man of God he was. Who is watching us?